I won't to the pursuit of truth. So this one is obviously going to be about Donald Trump. I am dubious of Mr. Trump and his agenda. But that's not to say that all of these presidents and prime ministers and premiers, I'm probably wary of all of them, because none of them seem to want to make better for all of us. A lot of them seem to want to keep the status quo, even though surely, like all of us, don't we all know that this system isn't working for all of us? It only works for the 1%, the rich people who have all the money. And this is not like against them or anything, but this is a situation that majority of that 1% always find themselves in, because it just keeps going down to the next generation. And maybe a lot of that money is ill-gotten in the first place. So it's not like it's fair in that sense. But that's not really what I want to talk about. I was just worried with Donald Trump and his assertion almost immediately after the plane crash, like him speculating that it was terrible and then within 24 hours, and I mean, I don't know what information he's getting, and maybe it's just he's acting in a different way than other world leaders or politicians who usually keep to themselves information that they're given until investigations are at least released to the public, rather than sharing that information. Because I guess when he says the helicopter was too high, and he's talking about disability inclusion and all that kind of stuff, and his normal agenda of against, it seems, anyone that's not white. And I know he does, I mean, it's not my allegation. There's lots of people that make allegations of him in that sense. His anti-American, anti-non-American, like the immigration policies that he has and all that kind of stuff. But my worry is that his misunderstanding, maybe, well, I don't know if it is or not, but to me it seems that the whole reason why there is this inclusion for disability, for different, like he likes to talk on his press advisor about it shouldn't be about colour of skin and all that kind of stuff. The whole reason for having those inclusions is because of the history of how some white people in power, and that isn't just like leaders, that's, industry leaders, business managers who recruit people, have historically, in the Western world, prioritized white individuals, white-sounding names. And this has even been tested recently. And there was an investigation where someone, had the same CV, put different names, one that looked English, one that didn't, and they got a response for the one that was English. This is nothing new. This is still happening today. And this is why it's needed, because to make fair the playing field, so that people have to, like say when apartheid happened, when, the cricket teams and etc. had to have a mix of players, because if they didn't have that, they wouldn't do it. And that's the same with industry. And I don't think, he's sort of suggesting his sort of blasé view of this, and irresponsible view, I feel, is that he's sort of saying that, well, what's happening here is we're employing disabled people, or, people who are, the colour of their skin is not the same as his. Well, I'm not sure anyone's is, but are the problem, in the sense that he's suggesting that, they are not, that we should be picking the best people for the job. But I don't think that's how it works. I think the inclusion part is that when you're recruiting, in the past, and this is, I assume, why it's there, the white candidates would stand a much, much better chance And I suspect even with the inclusion, it's still happening. So to give them quotas, but I don't think then they say, well, wait a minute, look, we've got this person here who's white, and he's far superior than this one who's black. But we have to pick the black one, but he's not as good as the white one. I don't think that's really what's happening. Because it doesn't, like a CV and how much someone's capability, it can't really be measured. You can do IQ tests, you can do exams, but certain, like someone's capacity is very difficult to really gauge that. In assuming that the people are compos mentis. We all work, and we all know that there's different. And it's not even and that it's just human beings. That's how it should be looked at. Human beings, they have different, when you work, there's some that work really hard, and there's some that don't. There's some that make more mistakes. There's some that are more studious. So, but I don't believe just because this inclusion's in there, they're just taking someone who's not fit for the job. Just because their hands are tied, that they have to pick someone from a different, ability. Just because you're disabled doesn't mean that you're not able to do a job. That's why I don't like the word disable. That needs to be changed, because that gives the perception. People maybe who don't really think about it like that. Let's just remember, when Donald Trump is and the press secretary is sort of alluding to disability being unable to, that we need the best people, superior people to run the job. In my head, something just popped in, but I'm not going to say it because whenever you say that, it sort of detracts where that sort of feels familiar. But the most famous, intelligent person was who until he died? Stephen Hawkins. Professor Stephen Hawkins would be considered one of the most intelligent people that ever was on this planet to scientists, whether you believe in his theories or not. People may say Einstein as well. Well, Professor Stephen Hawkins was disabled. He was in a chair. He was unable to talk. He would have been written off with that kind of mentality. And yet he's the most intelligent person of the 20th century or 21st century. So this sort of, that doesn't mean anything. We have to find the best of every person. And the problem is unfortunately, because of history and the way we are, certain individuals of, when they can be categorized, which I don't like the idea of categorization. In my world, we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't have colors. We wouldn't have, that. We would just see people as human beings. Because that's what we really are. But the system that we live within cuts us all up and makes us tick boxes and to fit into this and this. But the problem is, because of that system, it means that people look at people based on things. Historically, even to today. And that's why these inclusion things are needed. Because if it wasn't for that, employers would not be employing disabled people. Because they'd be thinking, oh, this person can't do the job. Wow, Professor Stephen Hawkins could do the job. I'm sure Einstein, I think he was dyslexic, wasn't he? There's lots of these famous people who had hidden disabilities. And yet look what they did. So I think it's, to me, I get what he's saying. What they're saying is if the person who's not fit for the job, but I don't think any HR or any employer is employing people that are not fit for the job just because of DEI. I don't buy into that. I think that's a very, it's an argument that's certain people make to try and back up their falseless claims. I mean, unless he knows who the people are involved in all this, he may know because he's briefed. But we don't know all this. We don't even know if this is even part of it. I hope to God that everyone involved in the flying of these planes and in the air traffic are white Americans, so that it will shut him up. And then what it will say? Well, then it'll probably say one of them was autistic or something, and that'd be his excuse for why the crash happened. I mean, it seems just without because even if he may be getting the information, he should be keeping it to himself, like they all do, until an investigation is released, so we can all see the information and make. But yeah, maybe that's not right though. Maybe he is. Maybe it is better that he's being more human and he's just relaying the information. But the thing is, he doesn't relay the information. He relays his accusations. He doesn't relay the information that, or I have been briefed by an investigator that this person was suffering from this, and this is why I believe that it happened. Which then you would say, okay, he's put some facts, and that's his conclusion, and he's entitled to his opinion. But he won't talk about the fact part. He won't say whether he's been told or not about anything. And then it just appears that he's just speaking. You know, it's his agenda coming through. His agenda of America great. But what does he seems to be narrowing down what he sees as America. That's what it feels like. And that's the danger. And it's a danger because America's seen as this great democracy. Not that any country is a real democracy, because you only have two old men that you get to vote for, and it's the same system, and their differences are so less. They're all part of the same boys' club. Never going to change. There's no real choice in our lives. We're here to work, to earn money. All these things, when we were born here, everything's free. No one owns everything. It's all of ours. And we should be sharing it all. But we don't get that choice. We get a choice where you have to work to be able to live, to be able to breathe, to be able to eat, to be able to care for yourself, care for others. I don't see him talking about any of those things. Just wanting to put tariffs on countries and make out because they're putting fentanyl into the country. But, I mean, what bad things have America been doing? It's just it feels like the big boy, in school, he has that power and he's going to use that power. And anyone who's smaller is going to suffer for it. That's how it feels. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in America. But I probably will feel it when he puts a tariff on the UK if he does. Maybe he won't because he's part Scottish. But I don't know. To me, it seems like this time around, he's a lot more serious about doing the things that he really wants to do. He knows it's his last chance now, unless he's going to change that and become a dictator like Vladimir Putin. He's going to try and do all these radical things that I don't know whether they're going to. I don't think they're going to change America for the better. And the view of America, I don't think, is going to be one that people look at of wow, the land of the free. And I think it's going to influence a lot of countries who may want to do the things that they want to do, and they will get a green light from his behaviour. And, like he wants to do, he wants to take over Panama Canal and all sorts of other things, Greenland and whatever he's talking about. It just feels very dangerous these times, and what the rest of the world will now do when that unstable in character is there. I don't know. This is just my view. I could be wrong. I don't know what's your view. I'm just airing my view of my concerns over this. I want difference. I do want different. I don't want the same as like Keir Starmer or Clinton or Biden or Margaret Thatcher or Tony Blair. I don't want any of these. None of these fit what I think the model, any democracy, the Western democracy, China, Russia, the Middle East. I don't believe any of them suit humanity. So I don't buy into any of them. Some of them are better than others if this is the only choice you've got, but it's not the best choice for humanity, the way that we live, the way that we divide each other up, the way that we see each other, the way that we see our whole existence is flawed, and irrational and wrong, because it doesn't serve us as human beings to let people suffer or to have systems that create or allow suffering when it needn't be that way, just because of history and our forefathers, and keep the status quo ongoing. Because, oh no, what would happen if it changed? Oh no, what would happen if we didn't have money? Of course, this will all change when AI comes in and starts replacing us to do work. And then we'll have to think of other things to do, because we won't be able to pay to do work because AI will be much better at it. And then eventually we will adopt a system, and then we'll be thinking, well, why did we do all that stuff in the first place when everything was given to us freely? Why did we restrict ourselves? Anyway, that's my view. What's yours? Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.
In recent days,
Lindsay, go ahead.
In recent days, the CIA actually revealed that they do also believe that COVID-19 was from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. How is the president planning on responding to this additional intel from the CIA, and will it impact how he responds to them with tariffs?
Yeah, kudos to John Ratcliffe for revealing that truth and that fact to the American people. Many years too late, the Biden administration had a chance to let the American people know the truth about that, and for some reason, they chose not to. I also would just like to point out that several years ago, when I was working in this press shop and President Trump would take to this podium to brief the American people on COVID-19, he suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China. And many members in this very room mocked him for that, said he was spewing conspiracy theories. He was not. We now know that to be the confirmable truth. It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again. Sure.
Caroline, thank you. I wanted to ask about Secretary Rubio's trip to Panama first.
Sure.
What have the conversations looked like with President Trump on that? The president of Panama says it is, quote, impossible to negotiate over the canal. So what are you expecting from this visit?
So I have not been present for Secretary Rubio's conversations with President Trump about the Panama Canal. I have been present for President Trump's own thoughts on the Panama Canal, and you've all seen them as well in his public statements that he has shown. He believes it's unacceptable that the canal is essentially run by the Chinese Communist Party. If you look at both ends of the canal, massive Chinese Communist Party linked companies run the canal. That's unfair to the American people, many of whom lost their lives many years ago building this canal. The American taxpayers are paying millions of dollars for the canal, and the president believes it's in our national interest as a nation for Secretary Rubio to go there and begin these discussions, and that's exactly why he's doing that.
Caroline.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Is the United States in the process of pulling out of Syria militarily? Because the president wanted to do that in his first term as well, and he had a lot of pushback from the Pentagon and Congress. And based on what he said yesterday, is he considering doing that in a short time?
The president was asked and answered this question yesterday, and he, as the commander-in-chief of the United States military, reserves the right to review troop deployments overseas at any point in time.
Is that a topic right now?
Yes.
Thank you. Two questions. So we now know that the staffing was not normal at the air traffic tower, and so with the government freezing the hiring of new federal workers and offering buyouts, are you not afraid that more incidents of different kind could happen with less staffing in different agencies?
Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating DEI hiring practices at the FAA. He also, following the tragic crash, as you all know, in the Oval Office yesterday, signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the FAA to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and aviation safety standards. And I would also just say there's a cultural piece to this as well. If you are an American who has spent many years studying aviation, and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description.
Just picking up on that. She forgot that, wait a minute, she said Americans. Well, aren't the people that would qualify under DEI, aren't they also Americans? So she needs to quantify that, no?
studying aviation and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description, I think that deteriorates the morale of people in this industry. And if you talk to people in this industry, they'll tell you that. In fact, many of them filed a lawsuit against the FAA a couple of years ago under Joe Biden's administration because they were denied positions because of this DEI hiring practice that was putting identity politics over merit and skills. That's unacceptable, and I think just to put a fine point on this, because this is the third or fourth question I've answered on this subject, when you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. Rob Crilly.
Shocking.
Yeah, this has been the first major unexpected test for the new president, just 9-10 days after his inauguration. A major crisis and a national disaster. It's at times like this that a president would normally issue a rallying cry to unite the nation, would offer words of comfort and condolence, not just to the family and friends of the victims, but also to a nation in mourning. But as if we needed any further evidence that Donald Trump is no ordinary president, this has provided it. His first news conference in the wake of this tragedy, he did begin seemingly striking an appropriate note of solemnity. He called it an hour of anguish for a nation. He asked for a moment of silence, but it wasn't long before he was on more comfortable terrain, playing party politics. First of all, blaming Democratic presidents past for what unfolded. He said the Barack Obama and Joe Biden administrations had presided over declining standards in air traffic control, perhaps forgetting that his own first administration was sandwiched directly in between the two and had similar policies around air traffic control. He then took aim at DEI policies. These are policies of diversity, equity and inclusion. We don't yet know what caused this crash. We don't know if race, gender or any other specific characteristics had even the smallest part to play. These are baseless claims. President Trump himself admitting he had no evidence to substantiate them. But that didn't stop the two men who were with him at that press conference, his Vice President J.D. Vance and his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, making similar claims. And just in the past hour, as you said there, Mark, he's been signing yet more executive orders in the Oval Office and was asked once more about these DEI claims he's been making.
So to be clear, are you saying race or gender played a role in this tragedy?
It may have, I don't know. Incompetence might have played a role. We'll let you know that. But we want the most competent people. We don't care what race they are. We want the most competent people, especially in those positions. And you're talking about extremely complex things. And if they don't have a great brain, a great power of the brain, they're not going to be very good at what they do, and bad things will happen.
Oh my god, the man can't even speak properly, no? If you have a great brain. Oh my goodness, come on. I mean, the sentences don't even have intellectual structure or grammar or... I shouldn't be, it's not against him, but it's just like funny really, isn't it? I would argue that the most important job is running of all the people that you have dominion over, and you would need a great brain there. Not someone who's losing money out of his for all of his businesses and was on TV. I mean, does he really want that test, competency test? How would we do that? And would he even pass the competency test to run what is many people believe is, the greatest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, with all its nuclear weapons and all its... What happens then ripples around the world. Would he pass that competency test? I mean, the fact is, I was given the benefit of doubt that he may have had information And that's why he's making his claim about DEI. But he admits there, openly, that he does not know. He said, I do not know. You do not know? You don't know that DEI played a part? And yet you're making out, claims that it as if it did? I mean, that is not something that someone with intelligence would do, because it could backfire on you, isn't it? You could say, oh, it's because of this, and then it turns out to be nothing like that. But then how do you look then? Is that what a competent person should be doing? Is that what you want your manager or someone who's running your life to be saying? Really, come on. Unbelievable, isn't it? Right, so there, I put the clips on. I wasn't going to do it, but I thought, let me just put the clips so you can hear what I heard, the bits of it. I'm sure you've heard more. I don't know, it makes me laugh when the way he talks doesn't come across as an intellectual. And I'm not just saying that in the sense that he doesn't play like a politician and not answer questions. That's refreshing. I give him that. He is refreshing in the sense that he's appears like a normal person in the way he speaks, in the way he doesn't deflect and play the games that he probably was never taught. Because I don't know what school he went to, but he may not have gone like all the other politicians to the private school that teaches you how to deflect questions and all that kind of stuff like they do in Oxford and Cambridge and etc. So, debating. So, yeah, I'll give him that, but just the way he talks sometimes, it doesn't come across as very intellectual. And the fact that he's saying that he's making claims and his administration are making claims, press secretary, etc., talking about DEI after an accident, when you don't even know whether that even played a part, that's for another day. First you have an investigation, and certainly you, as the president, should be finding out these information before you start talking about things that may not even be connected, because it doesn't look good on you if it turns out not to be the case. So I don't know, but I thought that maybe he did have information, but him saying, I don't know, strange. And of course now there's been another plane crash. I think it's in Pennsylvania. 6 people had I think it was an emergency vehicle. So of course he's sort of making out that, it's not safe, and yet people are asking, so is it safe to fly? Yeah, it's safe to fly. Carry on flying. Wait a minute, you just said that it's not safe because, the competent people are not in the position. So is it safe? Because I think at one point she says 2 answers can't be true, and yet, what are you saying then? Because if you're saying they're not competent, then it's not safe then, is it? And of course now that with this second crash, people are going to start thinking that it's not safe, because he hasn't been statesmanlike and stood up and rallied everyone together. And I think the other thing, and I did sort of pick up on this, is the press secretary. I think it was very telling the way she answered that question about how she started talking about, she was talking about, I think, the FAA claims with, I assume it was white people trying to get jobs, and they felt that they weren't getting them because of the DEI, and the way she frames the question, when she's talking about it, is that, can you believe if you're American and you've done all that training, and the way she does it is sort of like trying to make out that these other ones, the people who are getting through on DEI, are not somehow American, because wait a minute, well, they're American as well, no? So why did you quantify American? And then are we to believe that you are trying to suggest that the people getting in through the DEI part haven't done the same amount of training? I mean, I don't think that's factually accurate. They want to talk about facts and fake news and truth and stuff. Yeah, I suspect that the people that get in there who are through the DEI part and through the non-DEI part are Americans. And even if they're not, that doesn't make a difference, does it? because we're all human beings. And there's lots of things that come from around the world that if we'd been this kind of mentality of only looking for this one little circle, we wouldn't have so many things. Think of all the things you probably think that come from your country that actually come from another country, like writing, numbers, science, etc., etc. Lots of things come from everywhere because, guess what? We're all human beings, we all have a great mind, and they pop up everywhere. And that's why we should be working together, not trying to say, oh, only this circle. Anyway, that's another thing. But the fact that she talks about Americans and studying as if they're not doing the same thing. So, like I say, both sets, I'm sure, are Americans. And I'm sure they did the same amount of studying. And they passed whatever test that means they're equal. But the problem is like she says, well, when someone's flying, you're not thinking, do they have the colour skin? But what the problem is that what we want in this world that we live in the 21st century is for people to be treated equally and fair. But it's not happening. And that's why you need DEI, because people still look at people who are different to them, whether it's to do with ability, to do with their bodies, to do with their faces, to do with whatever, and make judgments on that. That is reality in the system that we live within. It's not something that's part of humanity, because when we're babies, we don't do this. It's something we're taught, either by design or by fault. But it's not something as babies we have. It's not intrinsically part of humanity. It's part of the system, a breakdown of the system, maybe because of the way we group things and etc. And that makes it happen. I don't know. But it does. And so you know that happens. So that's why you have to have this, to make sure that the same competent people who are disabled or black or whatever are getting the same chance as those white people who don't need to prove themselves, don't need to do this, that and the other to get their job, because they're always going to get it because of their face and because of their name and because of their ability or whatever. Competence doesn't come into it. You can still be, autistic and be very competent. You can still be disabled and competent. You can still be black or Mexican or Russian or Chinese or American or white or whatever and be competent. Those things do not fall into the frame of those things. Everyone would love to live in a world where we don't need DEI, that we could trust world leaders, that we could trust people with power, whether it's an industry or employers and etc., or HR, who would not judge people, would judge people based on their merits and not based on, oh, this name I like the look of, or, oh, when this person comes in, oh yes, I trust him, because you have all these preconceived ideas in your head that you don't even know are making judgments that you may think, oh, I'm not racist, but all this programming throughout years, through TV programs, through conversations, through all these things, because as I say, as babies, we didn't have all these thoughts, we didn't have in these ways of looking at people differently or making decisions that we didn't even know. That's happening. Unconditional bias. So, yes, we'd all love to live in that world where that's not the case. And I look forward to that world where we don't need DEI and we don't need all these things, because we actually pick, the best people, and they turn out to be all different colours, all different abilities and disabilities and etc. But unfortunately, in the time we live in, it's still not happening, despite even having all these policies in place that are supposed to protect people. It still doesn't happen with all this protection and all these things. Because look at the world leaders, what colour they are. Look at the all managers, what sex they are or what colour they are. Look at them, line them all up. And you'll see the majority of them are men. And the majority of them are white. So I get what he's saying. Competence is important, but I don't believe that the people employing people, because they have policies of DEI, are saying, well, I'm going to employ someone who's not competent. He didn't even study for 7 years, or just because he fits that bill. I don't think that's happening. And the thing that was interesting to me is I found the journalists were, previously the journalists were very attacking of Trump, but I noticed this time they weren't so much. So either they've subdued to it, or he's only letting certain ones in, I don't know. But I didn't see the same kind of, what I would have expected people to be sort of standing up for DEI and for the people that are now going to feel difficult in their jobs and life, that people are going to look at them and think, well, are you competent? Because one man saying something that he doesn't even have any knowledge of, according to himself. He says he doesn't know whether that played a part or not. He just believes in his agenda, in his mindset, that's what's coming out, that he believes that makes a difference. And I think that's shocking. It's like we're going backwards, not forwards. We're going backwards again. When are we ever going to go forwards if we keep going backwards? We're never going to get to this place where we all live together as human beings, benefiting on all the things that have been given to us freely, that we could do all things with each other and have a better existence. Anyway, take care, take it easy, God bless and peace.